For reasons that utterly escape everyone involved, you're listening to A Bipolar, a Schizophrenic, and a Podcast. Here are your hosts, Gabe Howard and Michelle Hammer.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hammer and I'm schizophrenic.
My name is Gabe Howard and I am bipolar. Since we started the show, we've been getting emails. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate it. You can email us at show@psychcentral.com. And people have been asking us questions. And this is really cool. Michelle and I are both public speakers and we do this for a living. And after our presentations and our speeches and our keynotes, et cetera, people raise their hand and ask questions. And we've started to notice some patterns. And we've selected some of the questions. Some of them came from your emails and some of them came from speeches and some of them came from our personal emails. But we've narrowed it down to a few questions that Michelle and I are going to take a stab at answering. Michelle, are you ready?
I hope so.
The first question I think is kind of more for me than you, but they asked what it was like to be manic. So do you want me to take this one or?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Mania is always one of these very difficult things to explain to people. Mania sounds like being too happy. And that's what people kind of think of. They're like, oh, you're manic, you're excited, you're overjoyed. And that is a small part of it. And I can see why the public has kind of a hard time following along. Being too happy reads to them like having too much money. But being manic is much more than that. It's a consequence-free environment, and it's the inability to understand consequences. The example that I always use is this. Michelle, if you jump off of a 30-story building, will you die?
Yeah, definitely.
But see, that's not true. The actual act of leaping off of the 30-story building won't kill us. It's the landing that will kill us, specifically not being prepared for it. If you use a parachute, if you have something soft to land on, if you have a jetpack or the ability to fly, if you have any ability to plan for the future, you'll be fine jumping off that building. But in mania, all you think about is that very moment. You have this invincibility complex. And you think, hey, leaping over this fence won't kill me, and I don't care what's on the other side. And of course, what's on the other side is a 30-story drop. And this is why people, when they're manic, spend all of their money and don't have money for rent or food. It's why they don't go to work, because they can't see the consequence of not being able to pay their rent equals eviction, not going to work equals fired. They very much live in the moment. So what's it like to be manic? It feels fantastic, and it's like being lied to, and it feels so incredibly awesome, but it's so incredibly dangerous because nothing about it is true. You feel like God without any of the magic powers.
Not any magic power?
Look, the snarky part of me wants to say, when I was manic, like, it attracted people. People liked, the loud, charismatic, funny guy. But I really think that was just an extension of my personality, not mania. It's not like now that I no longer suffer from mania, I don't have charisma. I think that there's a certain subsection of the population that likes out of control people. And when you're up for 2 or 3 days, you have nothing but confidence. And what is your favorite phrase, Michelle?
Confidence can get you anywhere.
Yeah, and people who are manic have the most confidence.
Yes. Would you say that, which is worse, kind of like mania or depression?
Michelle, have you ever experienced mania? You have, right? I know It's unusual for people with schizophrenia, but you've experienced drug-induced mania.
Alcohol-induced mania, for sure, definitely. Especially my freshman year of college. It was manic like crazy. I remember one time I was coming home from drinking at some party, and I was just climbing on top of every car I could because I could. I was like, I'm going to climb on top of a car. And people were saying, you're going to get arrested. And I was like, no, I'm not. I can climb on top of this car. I can do anything I want. I don't care what you say. I can do anything that I want to do.
Yeah, that sounds like a little bit of mania. And you've experienced depression, right? Have you been suicidal?
Yes.
So what do you think is worse, mania or depression?
It's weird because I feel like I never really had real happiness, because every time I thought that I was happy, people always thought I was like out of control. I was manic and all that crazy stuff. But when I was depressed, like everybody knew, like, why are you so sad right now? I mean, mania feels better. Depression feels worse, but they're both pretty terrible things. I mean, how can you really say that one is worse than the other?
I really like what you said there. I explain that to people all the time. And one kind of feeds the other, at least for me. If I'm really, really manic, I will then crash into depression. And going from a regular emotional range down to depression is a pretty far drop. So having that elevated mood and crashing all the way to depression, yeah, I like what you said there. Both are really, really terrible.
Yeah.
So we'll call that a tie.
Yeah, let's call that a tie.
How does being bipolar, schizophrenic, and in recovery affect your day-to-day life? That's the short version of the question. To explain it to you, Michelle, better. The gentleman wrote along about how messed up he was when he was sick, but now he's well. But, obviously we still have the lingering effects of the illness because, medication, treatment, therapy, experience can only do so much. So for you, Michelle, now that you are in recovery with schizophrenia, how does that impact your day-to-day life?
I mean, my day-to-day life, the fact that I can't really get anything done before I take my medication in the morning, that really affects my day-to-day life. The fact that I work for myself because I can't work for other people. I tried to work for other people for a long time and then discovered that I just couldn't. So starting my own business changed my entire life. Medication, working for myself, my life changed a lot. But I would say I'm pretty good right now, honestly. Things sometimes go up and down, but being in recovery is definitely where I am right now, and I'm really glad that I got to this point.
Yeah, it minimally affects our day-to-day lives, but it definitely impacts it. I think a lot of people miss that. I talk to a lot of people with mental illness, and they're like, "Oh, it doesn't impact me at all." And one, that's fantastic. That is awesome. Congratulations. I'm not trying to talk them out of it. But what I think I want the general population to know and people to understand is that even if it has no impact other than it costs us money, we have to take medicine twice a day or at least once a day. We have to go to the doctor every quarter or every 6 months. We have to see therapists. We have to fill out paperwork. It's harder to insure us. It's just all of these things do in fact take away from our life. And those things do impact me on a day-to-day basis. Now, I'm going to hit left of center here and say that one of the biggest things that impacts me is the way people treat me. People treat me differently when they find out that I have bipolar disorder. Some people ask me a lot of questions and it becomes a very positive thing. They want help because they have a loved one. I get pulled aside a lot like, hey, my mom has depression. Can you help? Or I have bipolar disorder. Can you help? So that impacts my day-to-day. And I kind of think that in a positive way, but it impacts my life in a negative way when the president of the United States gets on the television and says that people with mental illness are responsible for all the gun violence in the country.
Yeah.
That makes it harder for me to get a job. And a lot of people try to follow up with me. They're like, hey, what do you think about your people killing people? And I'm like, wow, why do I have to answer these questions? I know that I've set myself up to do this because of my job, because of the podcast, because of my speaking and writing, etc. But I got to tell you, it's like a kick in the balls every time somebody wants to know what I think about my people causing all of the violence. And the source that they're citing is, the highest office in the land. It's not like they're getting some fringe source on the internet. They're literally quoting the leader of the free world with their information. So I can't even smack them and call them stupid. It makes it difficult.
You get blamed for a lot of stuff when it's really not your fault.
The next question I think is a good one for you, Michelle. I really like it. I know it was supposed to be your turn to ask, but how does being mentally ill affect your relationship with other people? Yeah, and I'm going to change it a little bit. I know this maybe wasn't the intent of the question, but I'm married. I'm not dating. How does being mentally ill affect your dating life? That's the ultimate in relationships with other people. For serious, I see your brain percolating with all these weird ass things that you're thinking about saying, but sincerely, you are a woman that wants to find love. Tell us about this.
I don't even know. I've been just kind of telling people up front. I feel like I can't, if I can't hide it from a roommate, I can't hide it from a person that I'm dating. In fact, I even dated a psychologist at one point. He even caught me one time. He goes, I don't know who you're talking to, but you're not talking to anyone in the room. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even do this. Yeah. So, he just Googled me and found out. It's just like, I don't want to hide a secret. I feel like I'm such an open person and I'm so about talking about mental health. That's what I preach. So the fact that I would try to hide it from someone I'm dating would go against everything that I'm actually trying to do. But dating is not easy. Dating is not easy in New York City. I don't know what I do. I go on dates. Sometimes they work. Sometimes they don't. I was in a relationship for a while before I started my clothing line, Schizophrenic NYC. And he kind of said to me, what are you talking about? And I was like, no, Schizophrenic NYC, because I'm a schizophrenic. And he goes, you're not schizophrenic. And I was like, no, I am. And he goes, no, you're not. And I go, yeah, I am. And he's like, he didn't believe me for a long time. And I was like, well, that's a really good response, I guess. I don't know.
I guess it shows that you're doing well, but you kind of, it felt to me like he was denying a part of who you are, refusing to acknowledge it. And of course, that wouldn't make him a very good ally if you got sick, because if he won't accept you when you're well, he probably sure as hell ain't going to accept you when you're sick.
Well, he moved across the country, so who cares about him anymore, really?
Liar, you're pining after him.
I'm not pining after him, please.
Listen, there are women that are willing to move across the country for men.
That is true. That is true.
That is totes true. You're going to be taken off any second now.
PsychCentral.com is the internet's largest and oldest independent mental health online resource. Since 1995, our completely free, award-winning website has been run by mental health professionals offering reliable, trusted information, as well as over 250 support groups to people living with mental illness. From professional articles to personal stories, PsychCentral.com is worth your time checking out and is the generous sponsor of this podcast.
The next question is, actually, it's your turn. Pick a question.
Okay, so we know there isn't a cure, but if there was, would you take the magic pill to make you not mentally ill?
Yeah. Is this a debate? I know that it's a debate. I'm kind of being a little bit of a smart aleck saying it. It's a huge debate in a lot of circles. But listen, unequivocally, 100%, if I could not be bipolar tomorrow, I would take whatever shot, treatment, whatever. I hate with every fiber of my being sick. I want to be well. It is not a gift. It is not magical. I hate it. And I kind of get annoyed that this question persists in our circles. That's how I feel about it. Very strongly, apparently. Michelle?
If I could have gotten rid of it from a very young age and got to live my life without schizophrenia, starting from a very young age, and then got to redo everything, I'd be like, oh, of course, right? I would love to not have schizophrenia throughout my entire life. But where my life is right now, I'm kind of enjoying it. So it's kind of in the middle. You know what I'm saying?
You would live with an illness, you'd be cured. No more pills, no having to wake up in the morning and wait for your pills to kick in, no more expensive buying them. You could work anywhere for anyone. You wouldn't have to worry about the 15% death rate because you wouldn't have the illness anymore. And of course, as you and I have talked about before, if your insurance goes away, so do your doctors and your medicine, which means you're approaching homelessville very, very quickly. Isn't that a reason to be cured? And who turns down cures for illnesses? I love you, Michelle, but for real, just wanting to be sick? Do you want to keep cancer? This makes no sense to me.
No, but I want to remain just as cool.
You're going to remain as cool. You're just not going to be sick anymore.
That makes sense. I get you. I don't want to take medicine, but I would have, but I'm just saying, can I have gotten rid of it years ago?
No, it's today. They invented it today. The scientists invented it today. In fact, the president.
I would probably take that pill. I think I would take that pill. If somebody was gone today, I'd be yeah, I would take it with some coffee.
With some coffee?
I wouldn't throw it away.
And notice how I said coffee exactly like you. Like, how did I develop your New York accent just instantly? Like, when did that happen? Like, that's messed up.
If somebody put that in front of me and said it's the curable pill, I think I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll take that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And listen, there is no wrong answer. I think sometimes I hate bipolar disorder so much. And I hate the stigma. I hate worrying about it. I hate being discriminated against. I hate fearing that I won't be able to get help, probably more than the illness itself. And I know that puts people on edge because they're just trying to lead their life with the hand that they were dealt. But I feel so strongly that this illness is so terrible. And I also kind of feel like I speak for those who died by suicide. And I think that all of them wish that they had that pill because they're dead now. Their life is over. This question came directly to you. It said, people with schizophrenia are often homeless, out of their minds, rambling, drooling. Why aren't you? We've talked before about how people accuse you of not having schizophrenia. So leave that part out of your answer. What is the honest answer to why you're not the stereotyped version of a schizophrenic?
Because I take 7 medications daily. That's why. Because I have a doctor. That's why. Because I have support from my family and my friends. That's why. I'm a very lucky schizophrenic. I have said that a million times. I am the luckiest schizophrenic that I can possibly be. And I understand that sounds weird, but like I'm a really lucky schizophrenic. I have the support from my family, my friends, and my doctor. And if I didn't have those 3 things, I would be homeless. I mean, what else can I say? That's exactly why.
That's like the best answer ever. I think that's like the most relevant thing you have ever said in your entire life.
Thank you.
Like in just this moment, I saw you blossom into a grown-up mental health advocate. That's so, but essentially what you're saying, just so that I can share in your moment, is that if treatment is available, recovery is possible?
Yes.
So the reason that you are not acting like a sick person with schizophrenia is because you've gotten help and therefore you are well?
I've gotten help and I've accepted help. I think that's the difference. You have to accept, you need to like accept getting help, you know?
I do want to build on a little bit and you know, talk about the person's description of, you know, homeless, rambling, out of your mind, drooling. Some of that, I kind of understand where they were going with the question, but some of that is also very stereotypical. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people with various mental illnesses, including schizophrenia, people who are untreated. And the drooling thing is a bit unusual. And I know the rocking back and forth it's not even actually a symptom of schizophrenia. It's a side effect of a medication. So I think the other reason that you don't act schizophrenic is because some of what people expect a schizophrenic to act like is just a pop culture stereotype. It's not even real. I don't think anybody with schizophrenia acts like that, you know, on the usual.
I mean, you're right. I mean, if someone's portraying a schizophrenic in a movie, they're not going to act like me. They're going to act like what you would think a schizophrenic would act like. They're portraying a stereotype.
Are you saying that pop culture is not a good place to get mental health education?
I think that's what I'm saying.
You know, that's mine. You owe me $12. The very last question that we want to touch on, this is one that Michelle and I get all the time, constantly. It's probably the number one question that we get. I feel very confident to say that for myself. I don't know about you and in your touring, but Michelle, what is the number one question that Gabe and Michelle are asked whenever we do speaking engagements?
I know somebody or my loved one isn't doing as well as you are. How can I get them to be doing as well as you?
That's a heartbreaking question, isn't it?
It is. It makes me feel so horrible because I really want to help them, but it's not a question you can just answer because it's so much about the other person. You can't change another person. You can't, change somebody's mind. It's so much harder than just, how can I? It's like, it's so hard. How do you say it, Gabe? It's like, what do you do?
I get asked this question so much, I've actually developed a bit of a coping mechanism where I say, I have thought about this question probably more than any other question that I've ever been asked. And all I know for a fact is that if I had the answer to this question, I could have wrote in here on a pile of money, because this would be $1 billion answer, $1 trillion answer. And there just isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. I can speak from the heart and tell you the things that helped me. And, I've got the same story as you, Michelle. We're not so different in that one. I'm lucky because I have health insurance. I'm lucky because I have money. I'm lucky because I have doctors. I'm lucky because I have great parents, great grandparents. I have good friends, family, support, the people around me. I'm lucky because people wanted to help me. And finally, I'm lucky because I was willing to work really, really, really hard. And I don't know what mechanism in my brain made me fight, but I have to say it's probably a lot easier to fight when you have a lot of access to care and you have a good support system cheering you on. So the first question that I ask is, does your loved one have all of those things? And the most depressing answer I get is when people are like, no, they don't have insurance. Insurance is impossible for them to get. They're unemployed. They have a pre-existing condition. They're 40 years old. They're single. They're male. There's nothing for them. What do I do to help them with no money and no insurance? And the answer is there's not a lot. In bigger cities, there might be help, but in rural America, man, in some places in rural America, there's not psychiatrists if you have the money to pay them. People are driving an hour and a half to see a psychiatrist. It's why I believe it's why I believe in, telemedicine. Seeing a psychiatrist over like Skype or whatever, because there's already a shortage of psychiatrists. The smaller your town, the less likely you are to have a lot of mental health professionals. There's a shortage in big cities. You talk about New York. Michelle, you live in New York, and you talk about how hard it is to find care.
I mean, good care.
Yeah, and that's New York City.
Some of the stories I've heard from like even people in New York City, they've been like, oh, my doctor said this, and I'm like, oh my God, you're going to the worst person ever. I can't even imagine what it must be in rural America. I'd never even thought about that, but that's so true. You're so right.
It's depressing, right? And not the mental illness depressing. It's like it's straight up depressing that we have this kind of need and that we can see it. I mean, Michelle, I love you and I think you're fantastic, but you have to admit, you and I are kind of nobodies. Like we're not politicians, we're not leaders of anything. We're just a couple of people with a podcast talking about mental health advocacy, and we realize the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is not a hard problem to figure out, but apparently it's impossible to solve because despite the best and the brightest minds that are working on it, we can't seem to get people the care that they need.
So unfortunate.
It's incredibly unfortunate. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to A Bipolar, A Schizophrenic, and a Podcast. Please tell all of your friends and help make Gabe and Michelle famous. We will see you next Monday.
You've been listening to A Bipolar, A Schizophrenic, and a Podcast. If you love this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Head over to iTunes or your preferred podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. To work with Gabe, go to gabehoward.com. To work with Michelle, go to schizophrenic.nyc. For free mental health resources and online support groups, head over to psychcentral.com. The show's official website is psychcentral.com/BSP. You can email us at show@psychcentral.com. Thank you for listening, and share widely.